All right, let's jump right into this explainer and look at the tape of a seriously charged Champions League semi-final first leg. We are breaking down the absolute heart-stopping clash between Atletico Madrid and Arsenal from 2026. Because let's be real, this wasn't just a football match. It was a pure, unadulterated test of human nerve, playing out on literally the grandest stage in Europe.
And that brings us right to the core question we're looking at today. What actually happens when the unstoppable pressure of a Champions League semifinal meets the world's most creative forwards? This question absolutely defines that clash at the Estadio Metropolitano. With a ticket to the final in Budapest hanging by a thread, you could practically feel the weight of the moment, pressing down on every single pass, tackle, and shot.
Section 1. The Metropolitano Pressure Cooker.
Right from the opening whistle, the atmosphere in that stadium was absolutely suffocating. It was an environment that demanded icy veins from every single player on the pitch. But despite that crazy pressure cooker, both teams started testing each other's nerves almost instantly. Look at these early warning signs. We had Arsenal's Gabriel Martinelli lunging for a chance, but in all the chaos, actually obscuring the sight of goal for his own teammate. Down the other end, Julián Alvarez immediately showed his world-class composure, bringing the ball down beautifully and firing a brilliant early shot that forced David Raya into a stunning, flying save right out of the gate. And then you had Noni Madueke getting to the byline looking incredibly dangerous with those sharp left-foot attacks. I mean, both these heavyweights were just throwing massive punches from minute one.
Section 2. First blood, the weight of the spot.
So all that intense pressure finally forces a crack in the defense. Arsenal's Viktor Gyökeres has the ball under control in the box, and Atletico's Henko tries to disturb him, just nudging him from behind. Referee Danny McCulley immediately points to the spot. It's a massive call, but as VAR confirmed, nudging a forward in the penalty area is always the ultimate risk. And this moment perfectly illustrates the immense psychological burden on forwards in these do-or-die situations. To put it into perspective, Joker has stepped up to the spot with a flawless 3-for-3 penalty record on the season. And facing down Jan Oblak under that blinding spotlight, total ice-cold composure. He stayed positive, buried the penalty, and suddenly Arsenal is up 1-0 right in the heart of Madrid. For the record, Julián Alvarez was sitting on a stellar 4-for-5 record himself, which, as we'll see, becomes incredibly relevant later.
Section 3. Griezmann, the creative architect.
Now, going down 1-0 at home, a lot of teams would just fold, but not Atletico. They simply turned the keys over to their veteran maestro, Antoine Griezmann, to orchestrate the chaos. And wow, did he deliver. He almost single-handedly bent the geometry of the pitch to his will. Just look at his creative influence here. He sparks an attack with this brilliantly clever little header right into the run of Alvarez. Then, his corner kicks. They weren't just dangerous, they were terrifyingly chaotic, causing absolute panic in the Arsenal box. He was pulling the strings on this intense, suffocating pressure, hitting the woodwork alongside Ademola Lookman. Every single time Griezmann touched the ball, you could literally see the Arsenal defenders bracing themselves for whatever terror he was about to unleash.
Listen to this call from the live broadcast because it absolutely hits the nail on the head.
Questions they're asking Arsenal, who are on the back foot, and they're rocking and they're digging very deep to hang in there.
Griezmann's masterful offensive orchestration had Arsenal completely on the ropes. They were suffocating under the combined weight of that stadium noise and the relentless creative brilliance of the Atletico forwards.
Section 4. The catapult Alvarez answers.
Okay, so that relentless offensive pressure we were just talking about, it finally boils over. After a frantic sequence with a mishit volley and a handball claim, Mahali points to the spot once again. Now it's Atletico's turn. Stepping up under unimaginable pressure, carrying the hopes of the entire Metropolitano, Julián Alvarez doesn't just score. He unleashes an absolute catapult. Literally, a mechanism used to launch a projectile at high speed. That is exactly what his right boot was in this moment. It was a blistering strike that completely bypassed David Raya before the exceptional goalkeeper could even do the math. It was a pure, jaw-dropping showcase of a forward handling immense pressure with sheer physical force.
Section 5. VR drama and the final whistle.
You know, you might think a 1-1 scoreline would settle the game down into a tactical stalemate. Nope. The final minutes descended into absolute high-stakes madness. Let's trace this timeline out because the sheer chaos of the climax is wild. First, Alvarez scores that catapult equalizer. Then, Atletico just surges with intense pressure, forcing a huge save from Raya and rattling the woodwork again. Suddenly, absolute madness. Arsenal is awarded a late penalty for a challenge on Eze. But wait, the referee gets called over to the monitor and VAR completely overturns the decision. And finally, the whistle blows on a breathless draw. The emotional whiplash in those final minutes, Staggering.
Let's actually compare those two massive defensive fouls involving Honko, because this is fascinating. In the first half, Honko challenges Gyökeres, penalty given, and VAR says it stands because it was a clear nudge. But in the second half, when Honko challenges Eze, a penalty is initially given, but then it's overturned upon review due to insufficient force. That single decision wiped out Arsenal's golden chance for a late winner.
And the VAR booth totally nailed it here, based on the tape. The analysis noted, it's a grazing of one boot on another, throwing his own legs into Honko to make the decision. The video assistant referee rightly spotted that minimal contact. Eze essentially went down trying to force the ref's hand, practically throwing himself into the defender. Honestly, you have to respect the absolute nerve of the officiating team to overturn a call of that magnitude in such an incredibly hostile environment. So when the dust finally settles, after the brilliant orchestration by Griezmann bending the pitch to his will, the breathtaking saves by David Raya, and the sheer ice-cold nerve of the forwards from the penalty spot, we end up with a 1-1 deadlock. It was an absolute heavyweight brawl that tested the limits of human composure. The sheer exhaustion on the tape is palpable, leaving everything perfectly poised for the next battle. As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to look ahead and ask, with the tie perfectly balanced, how are these two squads going to handle the immense pressure in the return leg? Who's going to hold their nerve in London to book their ultimate ticket to Budapest? It is exactly this kind of high-stakes drama that makes the Champions League the absolute pinnacle of the sport. Keep everything we looked at today in mind as we head into Leg 2. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.